again, everybody. Welcome to Cowboys Overtime here on StarTelegram.com. I am Fort Worth Star Telegram columnist, Mr. Mac Engel. You can call me Sir. Joined by my I got you there, didn't I? Joined by my friend, Mr. Nick Harris, who has not slept at all in the last 48 hours as the Dallas Cowboys have been a flurry of activity after their own quarterback said, we got our asses kicked by the Arizona Cardinals on Monday night. The Dallas Cowboys proceeded to trade for everybody. Nick, how are you these days?
What is a bye week? What is sleep? We don't need any of those things. No, we're doing good. It was funny because I got back home on Monday night at about 2:15 a.m. Again, because I live in Tyler. And we were expected to hear some news right around 7 a.m. So I set my alarm for 7 a.m. And then I was setting my alarm every 20 minutes after that just to keep checking my phone. And sure enough, had to be up at about 7:15 for a trade. And then I was able to get a lot of 20-minute naps in before the next trade went down.
You know, I'm really impressed. You have the ability to, and I didn't know men were able to do that, to hit the snooze button and fall back asleep.
Oh, yeah.
That's a definite skill. That goes on the LinkedIn profile. In fact, that may be at the top of the resume for you, Nick.
Thank you.
You know what I mean? Is I can go back to sleep on a dime. Good.
One thing I can do is sleep. If you ever need a sleeper, call me. I'll be here.
Mac, do you need somebody to come to your house and fall asleep? Because I got your back.
I got you, man. I know a guy.
All right, so let's get into Trade-a-Palooza. Yesterday morning and afternoon, the Dallas Cowboys did it. We're going to do this in chronological order. The first move the Cowboys make, they send a 7th-round pick to the Cincinnati Bengals for benched linebacker Logan Wilson. He's 29 years old. He's in his 6th season. He's only played every game in a season one time. He's obviously had a number of injuries. He's healthy right now. And when he was good for the Bengals, he was terrific. He was a big part of those teams that went to the Super Bowl. He totally got jobbed on a pass interference call late in the game in the Super Bowl loss against the Rams. Not that I'm bitter. Big part of the team that reached the AFC Championship game and got screwed again by the referees late in the game on a late hit out of bounds that wasn't on Patrick Mahomes. Again, I'm not bitter. Again, we're doing this in chronological order. Logan Wilson has been a very good player. The question I think anybody has is he a good player the Bengals were looking to move, or was he benched because they thought that the guy behind him was a better player?
Yeah, I think there were a couple of things going into play in Cincinnati. I think you could start with what was in front of him on their defensive line and specifically in their defensive interior. And the Bengals are the one defense that is somehow worse than the Cowboys statistically so far.
It's amazing.
And it really is amazing when you see the type of yardage that they've given up both through the air and on the ground. And, they felt like they were going to get more out of their rookie and Barrett Carter after a few games into the season. They've tried a lot of different personnel changes. That was one that they did change. And Barrett Carter ended up keeping the job. And so that forced Logan Wilson into requesting a trade and eventually why he's here in Dallas. But, again, you go back to when those Bengals did have good pieces around Logan Wilson, and he was able to, play his role, play his responsibilities, and he did them well. Really good eye discipline. That was what Brian Schottenheimer talked a lot about yesterday. And when you look at these current Cowboys linebackers, that is the one thing that really stands out about what they do not do well. This is a direct indictment on Kenneth Murray, the fact that they are acquiring Logan Wilson here. And, if it were me, I'd be starting Logan Wilson over Kenneth Murray day one.
So when Logan Wilson was right, and again, I think it's hard for anybody to really accurately assess of what he is right now, but he was right, and he was good last season until he got hurt.
Yeah.
You talked about eye recognition. Logan Wilson could get around the ball and intercept passes, which is an odd thing to do for where he played. Where does he fit on this defense? You said you put him in right now as the starting linebacker. And in all fairness to everybody who's playing football, Nick, I think you could probably be a starting linebacker for these Cowboys. Where does Logan Wilson fit in now?
Yeah, I think he fits into that Kenneth Murray role as the Mike linebacker. Now, the one thing that he would have to really pick up on here in the bye week is the communication that goes into that, because Kenneth Murray is your green dot. He leads the communication for the entire defense. So that is probably the biggest hurdle he would have to jump or have to clear. But when it comes to being able to fill run lanes, being able to identify passing patterns, being able to get back on Tampa too, because that's been the big thing that Kenneth Murray cannot do. His athleticism is really limited. Logan Wilson can do all those things. And so it's, he's not going to be perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Granted, he was replaced for a rookie in Cincinnati. He was exchanged for a 7th-round pick. There's going to be issues, and I think those issues will more so show up in the pass game. But in the run game, you finally have a guy that should be able to fill run lanes and be able to quickly identify those things.
But on the bright side, even though Dallas gave up a 7th, which obviously isn't a lot to get him, in your mind, this is an immediate upgrade, correct?
Absolutely, and I give them an A on this trade because of what they gave up. I mean, how I view a draft capital and trade compensation is, we'll get into it a little bit more with Quinnen Williams because there's more layers to that. But with Logan Wilson, if you spend that 7th-round pick on a linebacker of Logan Wilson's caliber, you are over the moon, glorified, happy about it. So it's this is a good trade for the Cowboys. It serves as an upgrade in their second level. I felt this is okay when they first got the trade yesterday. But then when Quinnen Williams came down, I was like, okay, actually, this will really benefit Logan Wilson a lot.
Okay, so let's talk about it. The New York Jets yesterday afternoon decided to take a flamethrower and burn their entire team to the ground by trading defensive tackle Quinnen Williams to the Dallas Cowboys. This was after they traded their All-Pro Pro Bowl cornerback Sauce Gardner to the Indianapolis Colts for 2 first-round draft picks. The Cowboys didn't have to give up 2 first-round draft picks, but they did send a first-round pick in 2027. That will be the higher of the 2 picks that they have in the first round. Of course, one of those first-round picks was acquired in the Micah Parsons trade. A second-round pick in 2026, plus defensive tackle Mazi Smith. Now, the one thing that wasn't clarified in this is by trading Mazi Smith, are they doing the Jets a favor or the Jets doing the Cowboys a favor? I'm not really sure about that.
I'm sure that was a conversation where they had it all hammered out, and they're like, "Hey, we got this defensive tackle.
Do you want this guy?
We're gonna cut him. Do you want him?"
Quinnen Williams is a terrific player. He's been an All-Pro. He's been a Pro Bowler. He's in his 7th season out of Alabama. The Cowboys right now on paper have terrific defensive tackles, and we'll get into that in a minute. But with Kenny Clark, Osa Odighizuwa, and Quinnen Williams, these guys are great. I mean, this is a terrific bunch. What should we expect to see out of Quinnen Williams when he comes to the Cowboys?
Yeah, it's absolutely hilarious because about 12 weeks ago, this was one of the worst defensive tackle rooms in the entire league. And now you're talking about not only one of the better defensive tackle rooms in the entire league, but one of the better rooms, period, over the course of the last 10, 15 years, because of not only the talent that you have involved, but also the money that you have invested in that group, which we'll get into a little bit later. But Quinnen Williams, fantastic talent. It took a couple of years for him to get going with the New York Jets, but once he did, rattled off 3 straight Pro Bowl seasons, all under defensive line coach Aaron White-Cotton, who is now the defensive line coach at Dallas. He played a big role in selling Quinnen Williams to the front office. And this actually goes back to the Micah Parsons trade. When Micah Parsons was traded to the Packers or beforehand, Jerry Jones called the New York Jets about Quinnen Williams, and he wanted that to be the deal. Didn't like the compensation that they were having to probably get in return for Quinnen Williams in a potential Micah Parsons trade. So it didn't go down that route. The Packers obviously had the better deal, and that's where it went. Fast forward, less than 3 months later, and Jerry finally gets the defensive tackle he was hunting all along in Quinnen Williams. And now to pair him with Kenny Clark and Osa Odighizuwa. But, I've explained this, how the Cowboys were trying to sell Kenny Clark is what Quinnen Williams is. He's a dominant run defender. He has incredible pass rush upside. He has beaten more double team blocks of all defensive interior linemen since 2022 in the NFL. Second in that category is Osa Odighizuwa. So when you have guys that can beat double teams at the rate that those 2 guys will, it's only going to open up more one-on-one opportunities for your edges. I think you are going to see the floodgates start to come open for the pass rush. I think that is one area that this immediately drastically benefits because there's going to be less guys dedicated to that defensive front. So Donovan Ezeraku, Dante Fowler, Sam Williams, Marshawn Neal, they have no excuse but to go and get after the quarterback down in the second half of the season. And if they don't, then, that's probably a spell for their future in Dallas. So, it's a guy that can benefit in so many different areas on defense, and he is just a menace. You watch what he does against opposing offensive lines, and he is just such a menace in the defensive interior. And he's going to continue to provide that for the Dallas Cowboys.
In any way, shape, or form, because I think it is this trade for Williams an indictment on how Odighizuwa and Kenny Clark have played for the Cowboys this season?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if Kenny Clark came in and gave you the type of production that he had, that they were hoping he would have in the first 8 weeks, then this trade would not be happening. They would have gone out and tried to hunt down a premier edge defender or a premier safety instead. Minkah Fitzpatrick was a name that was getting thrown around quite a bit. And then once this Quinnen Williams deal went down, that was kind of where the compensation was for Minkah Fitzpatrick. So that trade fell through. So, you would probably be looking at a different player on this defense if Kenny Clark had come in and provided what you expected. And to dive into the financials really quick, there's going to have to be something figured out in the offseason with these three. And I know it's looking ahead a little bit, but you are dedicating in 2026 $64 million to your cap between those three guys. Something has to get done, whether that is a trade to send either Osa Odighizuwa or Kenny Clark out of the door, to restructure Kenny Clark's contract. I think that's the most likely option, or to extend Quinnen Williams and kind of spread his money out down the line. So there's going to have to be something figured out by the front office in the offseason about what to do with those three guys. But I'll tell you what, they have a really strong defensive tackle room. I want to throw Solomon Thomas in that mix too, because I think he's been the most consistent guy they've had in the defensive interior so far this season. Not the most dominant, not the best, but the most consistent. And if they can get that consistent level of play out of him continued throughout the course of the back half of the season, it's going to be a really good room, man.
Okay, so when we go back and look at the Cowboys and how this has all evolved since they traded Micah Parsons to the Packers and what they gave up and what they got, this is what I have written down. I think I got this right. So they traded Micah Parsons. They've traded Mozzie Smith, both of whom were first-round draft picks. They traded their 2026 sixth-round pick. They traded one of their higher 2027 first-round pick. And in return, they get Quinnen Williams, Kenny Clark, a 2026 first-round pick from the Packers, and they also have some financial breathing room because they didn't have to give all that money to Micah Parsons. When you add all those pieces up, that's a lot of moving parts, but when you add all that up, did they come ahead? Is it a wash, or was it not good?
Yeah, it's tough to say right now. It depends on the level of play you get from Quinnen Williams. You need Quinnen Williams to be an all-world ass kicker for this to be a trade that you can justify at the end of the day. And if he's not, then it's not going to end up looking good. And shout out to the New York Jets, though. They got 5 first-round picks over the course of the next 2 years. So
you think they're going to hit on any of those guys? It's the Jets.
Yeah, which ones do they actually hit on? That's a good point. But honestly, credit to them for being able to figure out how to get the higher of the 2 draft picks in 27. But if you're looking at the Cowboys draft, not only do you need to hit on Quinnen Williams, you have to hit in the first round in 2026. If you do not hit in the first round in 2026, you are drastically impacting that window that they have created for themselves. The window, it closes in 2028. And so you need these first round picks to hit in this 26 draft class because they have those 2 first round picks and then they don't have another pick until the 4th round, Mac. And it's a big gap in between there. Now, if you're asking me, I think they take that 2nd draft pick from the Green Bay in the first round, probably move it back, pick up some draft capital. That's a conversation for down the line. But they need to hit on this draft class in 2026.
I hate it. The more I thought about it a lot, and I wrote about it after the game, that this is Jerry and the Cowboys doing what they always do, which is we're going to create conversations. We're going to be interesting because, before these trades, the way this season was going, this was a really boring, dull team. You're saying the same darn thing every single week. Now, they're bad teams. You get into that rut, right? The Jets are saying the same thing every week. Now, Washington is saying the same thing every week. There's like 10 of those teams where it's just that's what the season is, and that's what this was becoming for the Cowboys. You've given up Parsons. Kenny Clark to me has been an enormous disappointment. I don't think there's any way around it. And you hit the nail on the head. Had he been playing at the level they anticipated, they would have done something different. They might have gone out to get Mika Fitzpatrick. I'll learn how to speak later. I hate this. And the reason why I hate this, Quinnen Williams is in his 7th year. And this is all about a 2 to 3 year window now. And I just don't think, they had to do something. The Logan Wilson one I really like because they didn't have to give up anything to get him, but it underscores just how bad that linebacking unit has been. But in terms of how this all shakes out, I don't like it. I just don't see. I just don't see it's going to have that big of an impact on getting them to do something which they haven't done, which is to be a good football team in January. Do you?
Yeah, and you hate giving up Mozzie Smith, right? You just can't do that.
It breaks my heart.
I don't. They are really going to have to rattle off a special win streak here to get the postseason this year. But if we're talking about the future, I do like this move for the future.
The Quinnen Williams one?
I do. Did they overpay? Absolutely. There's going to be a deadline tax every time you do a deal right around the trade deadline. And I think they paid a tax here. They paid a premium tax here. Giving up a 1st-round pick and a 2nd-round pick, it's tough. And Mozzie Smith. But I think with the future, you do have a dominant defensive interior. But again, this is a huge emphasis for me here. You have to hit in the draft in 2026. That determines if this trade ends up being a plus or a minus.
Well, it'll certainly be interesting to watch. And by making these moves, the Dallas Cowboys have done what they always do well under Jerry Jones, and they are interesting. So it'll be watching how this develop and see if these kinds of moves has anywhere kind of an impact that the last time the Cowboys made a big deadline deal did. That was 2018 when the offense wasn't going anywhere. They didn't have top end receivers. They send a 1st-round pick to the Raiders for Amari Cooper, and they take off 1 week after he got here. They take off. They win a wild card game. They go to the Rams in the divisional round, and they lost to a better team. But the impact that Amari Cooper made on that team was remarkable. And Dak Prescott, I asked Dak Prescott after the game about making a trade and the impact and the boost it can have in a locker room and the morale. And he specifically mentioned what that deal did for that team. Do you think it's a hell of a comparison because you meant a lot of things have got to go right? Do you think these moves could have the kind of impact that Amari Cooper had on this team in 2018?
I don't, because I think you still have a bad secondary at the end of the day. You are getting Savone Revel back, the rookie 3rd-round pick. Well, not back. You're getting him, period, while waiting his NFL debut. But you can only expect so much out of him. He is a 24-year-old corner coming off of a torn ACL with only 1 year starting experience in the American Conference. Granted, has incredible physical tools and should be a good player for you, but you can't expect that right off the bat. Same thing with DeMarvion Overshown. He should be coming back against Las Vegas Raiders, but what can you really expect from him? I think this defense, I will say this. I think the addition of Quinnen Williams, it can bring you out of the basement of the NFL as far as defense goes. You won't be the 31st defense the rest of the stretch. If you can just be the 18th defense the rest of the stretch, then I think they have a shot at least putting together a run, but I'm not betting on it by any stretch of the imagination.
How about the American Athletic Conference catching strays from draft expert Nick Harris, just out here filleting the American Athletic Conference, where North Texas, our Mean Green, are currently killing it right now behind a 0-star quarterback who's going to be making big money in Power 4 football this time next year, possibly as the starting quarterback of the Arizona Cardinals. Good transition. Monday night, the Cardinals do as they always do and beat the Cowboys behind not Kyler Murray, but Jacoby Brissett. Cardinals come into AT&T Stadium and put it on the Cowboys 27-17. We've killed the defense. Out of the developments of this game, what are the ones that there's one specific one, but in my mind, but what are the developments that troubled you the most about that loss?
Over the course of the last 2 games, the first team offense has averaged 13.5 points per game. That's a concern. That's a concern going into the bye week. I think the bye week comes at a really good time, though. It allows them to figure out what is going wrong there on the offensive side, to where the first team offense is only producing that low of scoring. That's the biggest thing for me coming out of this game. And even on defense, I thought there were some bright spots. I thought the defensive front actually played well in this game, having 5 sacks, allowing 120-ish rushing yards, which by this Cowboys defense is a good standard. But it's overall, they were not able to help each other on third down. Third down was one of the worst it's been all season in this game. And red zone scoring. Those were the 2 biggest concerns for me coming out of that game. It was awful.
Well, the Cowboys are 3-5-1, and the one development that really troubled me, because we're now at obviously 9 games into the regular season, there's a lot about this offensive line that should be much better than it is. And unless you tell me differently, but I know after the game, Brian Schottenheimer talked about they were in a position because they were so far behind, we got to go, which means we got to hurry up and we got to start throwing the hell out of the football. Well, when you do that, that changes the dynamic between the offensive and defensive lines, offense, defense, right? And I'm sorry, to me, there were way too many times where it was an express lane to the quarterback for the Cardinals defense. Now, the Cardinals defense is actually not bad. And it's not great, but it's not bad. But I have not rewatched the game yet. Usually I go back and I try to rewatch it, kind of fast forward through it and look for some stuff that I obviously missed the first time. But on first viewing, Tyler Guyton, Terrence Steele, some of these guys are not good.
Even Tyler Smith had a rough day.
Yeah, and I was going to say him, and obviously you give him some room because I think all NFL players in a 17-game season, they're going to have days where they're just not as good. They're going to have moments. Offensive line, obviously your margin of error looks different, but to me, the bigger issue, what Tyler Smith is going to do mostly week to week, right? With Tyler Guyton, I don't know. I think at some point it's probably after the second season, but what do you make of his development right now?
Yeah, it's really tough that he didn't get that training camp that I think would have been really beneficial to his development this year. Dealt with a knee injury before the season and was thrown in week 1, basically without a huge ramp up. But, we are 9 weeks into the season now, and you have to see something out of Tyler Guyton that's different than last year. And
what are you seeing?
I'm not sure we have.
I haven't. I mean, the one thing that when I've talked to him a couple times, he's not a dumb guy.
No, not at all.
And I think he cares. And you can see physically he looks different from year 1 to year 2, which is a big deal for an NFL offensive lineman. But when I'm watching him play, I still see a guy that I don't know if he knows how to play the position.
The footwork stuff is tough. And when his footwork gets out of place, he starts to reach, and that's where you see the holding calls. Yeah. And, guys are starting to get around the reaches now, and they just duck under him and get to the quarterback. But I wonder with these first round picks in 2026, they have 2 of them. I wonder if another one is used on the offensive line, which would be wild. That would be, I believe, 4 and 5 years on the offensive line.
Well, it's just coincidentally, and I think when we come to player evaluation, there's one detail that is worth a lot. And Tyler Smith had it. And the knock on Tyler Smith when he came out of Tulsa was he played against American Athletic Conference competition. Well, okay, he's playing against a group of 5 slated competitions, Navy, it's Army, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the one thing Tyler Smith did have, he played a lot of games, a lot of Division I FBS football games. He did. And so there was a lot to look at about that guy to get an idea of what he was as a player in games. Whereas if you go back and look at Tyler Guyton's film, he barely played. He had not played that much. Now, I understand it's a little bit like a Darius Mims when he came out of Georgia rather. There are certain guys that you're drafting a body, and that body is coming out earlier than he should because he's such a physical freak. Who was the guy? I'm drawing Tyron Smith. Tyron Smith did not have a huge body of work at USC because he was so young. But
he had a huge body, though.
Yeah, he had an enormous body. But I do think sometimes and you know this, Nick, better than I do. When it comes to player evaluation, you can take any little detail to justify your view and why you like or dislike that guy. Yeah. But as it relates to player development, I don't think you can stress enough, has the guy played a lot and the value that brings in knowing what he might be. And I think it's one of the reasons why when we evaluated Arch Manning, that we were way too hasty on it because give the guy a break. He's barely played.
Yeah.
And now he's starting to play a little bit more. He's getting a little bit better. You've got to give those guys rooms. The question I have about Guyton is, how many games does he need, Nick, do you think, before – and I understand he's a first-round pick, and that changes everything, but how many games does he need, Nick, before you say, okay, that's a lot of games, and we kind of have an idea of what we're dealing with now?
Yeah, I think through 2 seasons, you start to really have a good picture and a good frame of what exactly you have. I do always call back to, though, during the draft process, and you mentioned it a little bit, he only had 14 career starts at Oklahoma coming into the situation. And I remember before he was even drafted by the Cowboys saying that, this is a guy that is going to take some development, but I think once you see in year 3 or 4, you're going to see that development start to turn up a little bit. And so I'm trying to stick to that point that I had, but you would at least hope you've seen some incremental increase at this point in his career, and I just don't feel like you have. I don't feel like you have. I call back to some of his good moments that he had in his rookie year. Game 1 against Myles Garrett, held his own. And you still see that show up at times, but I'm not sure you see that as consistent as you want to see it right now.
I think given his personality, I think given his athleticism, I think you stick with it. But I think you have to start, maybe the left side's too heavy. Obviously, Terrence Steele has had some ups and downs, and obviously he's coming back from a major injury, but he's had some ups and downs. And there are other players that we've looked back on with Cowboys. Doug Free is somebody. Doug Free was a good player, benched, came back and resurrected his career and was a good player for a long time. Certainly, Flozell Adams had his highs and lows. And you look back on those players and say, those are pretty good players. And I think with Guyton, you've obviously got to let it play out. But that game against the Cardinals and some other moments this season have not been great.
Yeah.
One other thing that we obviously want to get into about the Cowboys, because they've made such significant trades, is that we, at least in this state right now, after 9 games, you have to talk about the playoffs. Now at 3-5-1, okay, it's not exactly encouraging. So this is their remaining schedule. They're obviously on the bye week, and then they go to Vegas. Vegas has a losing record. They're home against Philly. Philly has a winning record. The Thanksgiving Day game against Kansas City and Taylor Swift. The Chiefs have a winning record. You go on the road to Detroit. Detroit has a winning record. Minnesota is 500, and with J.J. McCarthy, that could go either way. Then they have the Chargers, winning record. Washington, that's in a free fall, losing record, and then finish it with the Giants, obviously a losing record. 3 teams on that schedule with 500 or worse. They got to go 5-3 just to get to 500. Yeah. Let's just start with this. When you look at the NFC right now, would 8-1 get them in?
Probably not.
I don't think so either.
Probably not. I think you would probably need to get to. I think you'd probably need to get to 10 wins.
So do I. Boy, it's a killer. That tie to Green Bay's just lingers, right?
Yeah.
Now we're kind of kidding ourselves a little bit here in a way. They're 3-5-1, and even Jerry, as much of an optimist as he is, after the game, he said, "Look, we won 3 ball games. Yeah. 3 wins out of 9 is not great, right? 3-5-1 is not great." And when I mention all those different opponents, and obviously Washington and the Giants, you would think you could win those. Who do you see? I don't know. What do you see in this? What do you see in this remaining schedule? Best case scenario, Nick.
Best case scenario is a 5-3, and that's losing to one of those games in the middle there to Eagles, Chiefs, Lions. I don't see how they beat the Lions in Detroit on a Thursday night. The Vikings are starting to turn the corner a little bit. So are the Chargers. This is a tough way to finish the year, and so it's a tough reality, man. I think 5-3, 6-2. I think that's your best case scenario, and you're going to need a lot of help from the rest of the NFC.
I think the problem is, it's twofold. You're so far behind the 8 ball now. Cliches aside, 3-5-1 is so tough. And if you go back and look at the standings outside of the NFC East, there's a lot of 6-2s in there. And I'm with you. Even though there's 7 teams that get in now, you're going to have to get to 10. And 10, I think, is going to be too much. That hill's too steep. I think they'll be better because of the acquisitions and because of the return of some other players who will help. And, it's funny, we didn't even mention Trayvon Diggs. he would be one of those guys who you're going to get back when he comes off IR. But at this point, Nick, do you count that as a help?
I mean, yes, I would. It's an upgrade over what you have in the secondary right now, but I mean, there's not a lot to expect from that.
Okay, let's talk about one more thing before we wrap up on Cowboys Overtime, which is the so much success of Texas college football teams this season. The first college football playoff top 25, as written by ESPN, was released last night. Texas A&M is number 3. Texas Tech comes in as 8. And there is the lurking behind everybody else with a disappointing season, quote, Texas is 11. Now, we should mention also some other teams in the state have had pretty good years. Houston, which is coming off of a disappointing loss, is having a nice year under Willie Fritz. Obviously, our North Texas Mean Green are killing it right now under Drew Mustamaker. TCU's having a decent season. They've got 6 wins. Obviously, a tough finale to their schedule, but they've got Iowa State this weekend, and they're still on the fringe. They still got a shot at it. But clearly, right now, the class of the state are the Aggies. I don't know how much you've had a chance to watch them. A&M goes on the road this weekend to play Missouri, which is out without their starting quarterback, and now will be playing a true freshman in his place. Aggie fans have long memories, and there is a lot of hurt in there. A lot of PTSD with A&M. Should we be buyers?
No.
Wow. Okay. When I say should we be buyers, when you say no, what does that no mean?
No to national championship, because I think that's what that is trying to be sold right now.
No, they're not winning the national championship.
I'm not buying that. I'm not buying that yet. I want to see continued success out of this program. And let me tell you, this team is built really well on both sides of the ball. They have built this roster in a great way. And that's credit to the end of the Jimbo Fisher era and specifically now the Mike Elko era for sure. But I'm not buying that they are national championship contenders right now.
Will they get to the SEC title game?
Yes, I think they will. And I think that game in Austin is going to be a lot of fun on Black Friday. I think Arch Manning is finally starting to put together his best ball of his young career. And if he's still rolling going into that game, then that's going to be a war there in Austin. And that's for all intents and purposes, that's a playoff game for Texas.
Oh, absolutely. And it would be. Now, I don't know how much of the Texas-Vanderbilt game you were able to watch. Texas had that game in the bag, and then they damn near blew it. But, there's been a couple of games this season where they should have blown it. They should have blown it, and they won.
Yeah.
Good teams figure out a way to win those games that they should lose. And I think everybody should be a little bit worried about what UT could potentially. Now, I still don't like their offensive line.
Yeah.
Their playmakers still leave a lot to be desired. But they're getting better, and the fact that game's in Austin, they are in the perfect position to ruin A&M's season. Not ruin it, but hurt it.
Put a damper in it.
Yeah, put a damper on it. The big one is obviously what's going on in Lubbock. I mean, all the money Texas Tech and investments and resources and all these other euphemisms and that we'd like to use for money that they have spent over the last few years. Certainly, they're reaping it now. They're the 8th ranked team in the country. This is the highest they've been ranked since the Mike Leach era. ESPN's College Game Day will be there on Saturday. It's an 11 a.m. kick. They play BYU, which is also ranked in the top 12 of the college football playoff rankings. Tech is a 10.5-point favorite.
Wow.
I know that's an enormous number. And they're not playing the quarterbacks that they thought they'd be playing. What do you make of Tech's season? What do you make of Tech right now?
That's another team that has really put the roster together well on both sides. I love their defense. Their defense has some great players. David Bailey, Romello Height, both of those guys getting after the quarterback. Jacob Rodriguez in the second level. They've done a really good job of constructing that roster. I think the one thing that I am worried about as far as how deep they can make it into the playoffs is their quarterback play. Baron Morton, there's times this year where he's had to have the slack picked up for him, and now there's no backup quarterback in Will Hamady tore his ACL out for the season. So there's going to be a lot of spotlight on that quarterback position as they start to play these more high intensity games, whether it be against BYU or a potential Big 12 championship and then moving forward.
Texas has a bye this week. Well, let me go back to the Tech game. Do you think they'll beat BYU?
I do. I think having that at home is a big determining factor there.
Yeah, I think they beat BYU. I don't think they cover 10.5. Texas has a bye. Then they play Georgia. That's at Georgia. Then they have Arkansas and A&M. Does UT go 2-1 in those final 3 games?
I think they can go 2-1. Yeah, the question is 3-0. I don't know about that. That's tough to foresee. That's tough to foresee.
Last thing I'll ask you, and I don't know how closely you looked at. Did you look at the top 25 pretty closely? The top 12?
Yes.
Did you see anything in that top 12 that made you go, really? Are you kidding me?
Memphis instead of North Texas at number 12. No, I understand why, because Memphis got the win over South Florida at home. It's going to take Memphis losing. But if you look at that American Conference and you see, I believe it's 5 teams that have 1 loss at the top of that conference right now, it's going to be a bloodbath down the stretch. But if you're looking at it from the UNT perspective, they have arguably the easiest path into getting in, and they've gotten past Navy now. They'll have to get past Temple, which is going to be a tough team. That's another team with 1 loss in there. But aside from that, you look at all those other teams that have 1 loss, they have a much more difficult path to the conference championship than North Texas does. So if North Texas can just handle business, I think they'll be in that conference championship.
The one that really made me go, are you kidding me? And it's one of those that when I said it made me go, are you kidding me? And I'm going to double check it. I'm going to double check it right now just because I want to make sure I read it right. Yep, I read it right. The one that made me when I looked at the top 12 and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Notre Dame at 10.
Yeah, that's wild.
And I'm like, come on. If you took every year, this is the frustrating part about being a college football fan. It is a beauty contest, and it's not about who you beat. It's about who you know. And Notre Dame is the king of those categories. Coming in at 10, and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. All right. One question about North Texas prediction time. Will Eric Morris, who has been given a new contract, by the way, will he be the head coach at North Texas this time next year?
No, it doesn't make sense.
No, it makes. I mean, everybody's been fired. Yeah. The only guy who's safe is Kurt Cignetti at Indiana. Everybody else is getting fired. I wouldn't be surprised if Ryan Day's fired by the middle of December at Ohio State if he doesn't bludgeon Michigan.
Yeah,
that game's at Michigan, by the way.
Yeah.
All right, I've kept you too long.
I think Eric Morris. It's a small prediction. I think he ends up. At an SEC school.
Which one? There's only like 8 openings.
Yeah, I think Arkansas makes a lot of sense.
Why would he want that job?
As a G5 coach, that would make sense to want that job. Why would he want the North Texas job? He took it.
No, but I mean, I get that. I get taking if you're going to win at a G5 job. Arkansas has proven to be one of the worst Power 4 jobs.
Yeah.
So if you think other ones are going to be, and the other ones, I mean, now we've seen other guys overplay their hands, right? The window's only open. You don't know how long that's going to be open. And I talked about Rhett Lashley, and they've, SMU's given Rhett Lashley a whole bunch of money. If you're Eric Morris and you think you can do this and you believe in yourself, nobody has made Arkansas work but one guy since they went to the SEC. One guy. And that was Bobby Petrino, whom they fired because he was an idiot with an athletic department employee. And now they brought him back as an interim, which is an embarrassment, but that's a different discussion. No, since Arkansas went to the SEC for all that money, they've been totally irrelevant, completely. Yeah. Would you want that job?
If I was the head coach at North Texas and that was my option, yes.
Would you want Florida?
Yeah, absolutely. Florida's calling before Arkansas, absolutely. But I think Eric Morris probably ends up with an Arkansas-type job.
LSU?
Absolutely.
Auburn?
Absolutely. Again, this is more about what I think Eric Morris will have on his table, less about what he would take.
You don't think necessarily those other schools who've gone west before and outside the box, I mean, LSU with Brian Kelly, but, I mean, Auburn's fired everybody. I mean, nobody, I mean, they would probably kill to have Gus Malzahn back. But all these different jobs in the SEC that are open, let's just say all of them are on the table. Eric's agent get a phone call and says, you can have any of the SEC openings you want, you can have one.
LSU.
Which should he take?
LSU. Hands down.
Do you want
Hands
that?
down. There are more in-state advantages in recruiting with LSU, more resources in recruiting at LSU. It's a travesty that Brian Kelly hasn't been able to do something with it. I think LSU is one of the best jobs in the country, top 5.
And you mentioned something that is totally ironic. We'll wrap this up. LSU has more recruiting advantages than facilities and all this other stuff than almost any other job in America, right?
Correct, yeah.
And yet it is the flagship state school in a state that has absolutely no money.
Yeah. that is ironic.
That's college football sports logic right there for you. Okay, for all of your Cowboys coverage needs, great job on the trade stuff, by the way, Nick. I want to give you a shout out for that one. He's Nick Harris. Linda, your daughter did a terrific job. Candy, you can wake up now. All of your Cowboys coverage needs, check us out on StarTelegram.com. For Cowboys Overtime, I'm Mac Engel. We will see you next week.